Marvel has dropped the first 5 episodes for Echo, their new limited series. And this is the first Marvel series where they've dropped all the episodes at once, which is new and interesting, and I guess they're just playing around with the release model. And it's also kind of odd because when you look at the runtimes for each episode, it starts off with episode 1 being the longest at 51 minutes, which is realistically like 46 minutes before the credits, and then it just slowly gets less and less when you get to the 37-minute final, which is probably going to be realistically like 33 minutes. It's kind of odd, but the first episode was a breath of fresh air because it was different. It was violent, and they used the sound design to their advantage, and I really like what they did. Because Maya is deaf, I really liked how in some of the scenes they completely dulled the sound. There was nothing at all, kind of showing what Maya was hearing, kind of putting it in her perspective, and I like how they did that because they did it throughout the entire episode, and I think that is a nice added touch to making the series stand out as different. It was just super freaking violent, and this right here shows us that Marvel is willing to do shows like this. So we're gonna have a violent Punisher show, we're gonna have a rated R Blade movie, and we are going to get that violent part of the MCU, which I think is going to be great, because I was really worried they shying away from that because of Disney, but it looks like they're okay with going to that darker side of the universe and showing us the more mature content. However, as we go into the episode, the way it starts off, it shows us Marvel Spotlight, which I'm guessing is their new term for Marvel Limited Series, and showing it as this is like a spotlight to the character Echo, which I think if they do stuff like this for like one-off series, it's a really good way to introduce new characters, give us their backstory, show us who they are, and then you can start throwing them in other projects with characters they mix well with. Especially because sometimes when you have a movie, you don't have enough time to really develop those characters, so having their own little series or short, I think will do a good job at giving us new comic characters in the MCU, and as long as it's done right, it'll integrate properly. The one thing I'm actually kind of confused about is the whole ancestry part of Echo's character, because I haven't read a lot about her in the comics. I've read a few storylines with her in it, but I haven't really seen anything about a mystical or spiritual connection to her ancestors. This could be a change for the MCU, which would be an interesting change at that. And if that is the case, let me know down in the comments, because I would love to know, because I was having a hard time finding anything about that, because anytime I looked up Echo, Ancestry, or whatnot, I wasn't really coming up with any proper answers. But in the beginning of the episode, they showed us these people in like this spiritual cave that collapsed, and all of a sudden they teleported to the surface, and their skin started to peel. And it was all Maya and her cousin Bonnie as kids talking about the story of Chafa, the first of the Choctaw people, which I think was really interesting, showing us that backstory, showing us the Native American heritage, and it kind of goes off of What If, where they had that Native American heritage with the Mohawks and Kahori. So I like how they're adding more of that diversity into the MCU. It's always great to see this, especially as someone who is Native. I'm not Native American, I'm Canadian, but it's kind of cool to see that lineage in a Marvel series. And I really like how they showed us the backstory to her, because we did get a little bit of that in Hawkeye, and we did get more of it from Hawkeye in this episode as well. But I really like how they showed us where she came from, how her accident happened, and how she lost her leg. Because when she was a kid, she was at home with her parents, and I guess those are her grandparents, because later in the episode when she meets her cousin, they were talking about her being in her grandma's house. So I'm thinking those were her grandparents that she was at. Her and her younger cousin were like sisters to one another, but then she asked her mom to go get hot chocolate in this miserable weather because they needed hot chocolate, which is valid. It was pouring rain, kind of gloomy weather. What's gonna bring you up? Some hot chocolate, especially when you're a kid. But it's really interesting how it started off, because I was not expecting to take that dark of a turn that quickly. To be fair, Echo's backstory in the comics is a tragic one. So having this here showing us where she came from with her mother, having the brakes not working on her car, them getting T-boned, her mom dying in front of her, and then also a giant piece of glass going through Echo's leg, showing us how she lost her leg in this universe, which I think is really interesting. And I really like how they did this. Like, I just like how they set up the story, showing where her dad Willie was and how he was still in organized crime during this time, and the brakes were cut on purpose. That I guess it would kill him, but it killed his wife instead. So that person who got their brakes ended up dying themselves, because you don't mess with criminals. And of course that has to set up him going to New York. He leaves his wife's family behind, he takes Maya with him, and goes off for this new life to take care of his daughter and take her away from all this, and also get himself away from all the other criminal organizations there that could target his family. But it's very interesting how they set this up, because then Maya blames herself for her mom getting in the accident because she wanted hot chocolate, showing that this little girl carries this weight on her shoulders, thinking it's her fault her mom died, not realizing it was her father's fault, and they haven't really addressed it yet to show that. Maybe she realized it as she got older, or maybe that's deep down some traumatic experience that is keeping her back. But of course, after that, they have to show us a scene from Hawkeye where her and her dad are doing the shadow puppets and talking about dragons living in other worlds, which I'm pretty sure is just a reference to Shang-Chi and Ta Lo, because when this came out, Shang-Chi had come out a few months before Hawkeye, so it does make sense that's a little reference to that. Plus, then we see her being trained in the the martial arts with Kingpin and her dad doing some shady stuff there. And it was also seeming like her dad might have been working for Kingpin because he needed money and got indebted to him because he needed to support his daughter in a special needs school with her being deaf. And I think it was really interesting how they set that up and then giving us the scene again of Hawkeye in his Ronin suit killing Maya's father like we saw in Hawkeye. Which one thing I noticed about this episode is how this episode was heavy backstory based episode, but also quick recap of what happened in Hawkeye with her character. Because as it progressed, it showed Kingpin and Maya in the past and how Kingpin would get her from being arrested, showing his influence with the police of New York City, kind of implementing his power there, and then having him train her to be a killer. And it's ironic too because Kingpin turns around and talks about how his father died and how he felt about it. And in reality, he's the one that killed his father. And because it's looking like the Netflix shows are canon with the MCU, he's manipulating her, and it's shown that he continues to manipulate her. But on to the fact that the Netflix shows are now canon with the MCU, Disney Plus now has Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Defenders, Punisher, all on the MCU timeline. Meaning, all the events of these shows now take place in the MCU. Of course, there's probably going to be some retcons here and there for some of the stuff that happened during those series, and I'm sure they're probably going to recast some of the characters. However, if you want to watch any of the Netflix series, they are canon, which also adds up to a lot because in this, while Maya is becoming a killer and helping Kingpin take out a bunch of people, and after she snaps some dude's neck, which during that scene was pretty cool because they went quiet and you can only hear the heartbeat in the snap, which I think was a really amazing sound design touch they added to the scene. Then we get the badass Charlie Cox coming back as Daredevil in his red suit. He surprisingly didn't take out Echo during this scene and let her just walk away, but he did have a fun little fight scene there. And I'm hoping this isn't the last time we see him. However, the suit he was wearing was identical to the Netflix series. I have a feeling if he does show up again by the end of the series, probably won't be wearing his yellow and red suit, but also he might, because we did see that in She-Hulk. But after all that, that's where we really got the heavy Hawkeye flashback scene, because we got her training to be a killer, a true one at that, showing us the one with her on the bridge hunting down Hawkeye, showing us the warehouse scene where she first met him, showing us the Ronin versus Maya scene, giving us the reveals again about Kingpin being the true one to manipulate Hawkeye to killing her dad, then giving us the ending of Hawkeye where Maya shoots Kingpin in the face. And now the thing with that whole scene in its own, I totally thought they were going to have it where at the end of Hawkeye, Daredevil was going to come and kick the gun out of Maya's hand, but while he does that, that still shoots and hits Kingpin. But he doesn't die, which of course he's not dead because by the end of the episode we see that. However, it would have been a really interesting scene to see Daredevil come in during Hawkeye's final and kick the gun out to kind of play with some of our theories that we had during that series. And that's like the majority of the episode is the flashback and the Hawkeye flashbacks, giving us Maya's past, where she came from, what she went through, how she was trained to become a killer, leading us all the way up to the end of the Hawkeye series where she's now on the run from the gangs and Kingpin's empire because she shot Kingpin. And the series does take place 5 months after Hawkeye, and it's looking like from the main MCU timeline within that 5 months, this takes place after Moon Knight and Wakanda Forever, but takes place before She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, and Thor. So I take that back when I said about Daredevil being in his yellow suit, so it looks like he'll probably have his red suit again if he appears by the end of the series, and then he'll go up to She-Hulk to get that yellow and red suit, and then we see him again in his show, we'll probably see that. So it'll be cool, and I can't wait to see how they deal with that character. And I thought it was interesting what they did with Maya's character with her being on the run, because she's been shot, she's trying to survive, she heads back to her hometown to stitch herself up and find a safe haven in a sense. But when she's sleeping, she sees flashes of the ancestors we saw at the start, showing that there's more of a spiritual connection to everything going on, and that's where I'm wondering, like, do they do this in the comics? Because I don't think they do. However, that might be a new added thing to her character where she has this ancestry she can connect to with more spiritual aspect of things, because I know depending on the nation, they do have their own spiritual stuff they deal with. Because I even know when I was a kid growing up, we would talk about animals and spirits from animals and all that, and I think that's really interesting, and I'm curious to see how they deal with it in the series. And I hope they do it justice, and I hope people who are actually represented in the show can let us know if they're being done justice. While she was going through her town too, after she ran into her cousin and she went to go get stitched up, we did see an Iron Rings martial arts sign, which could be a reference to both Iron Fist and the 10 Rings, because I feel like Iron Rings is just a subtle nod to the Iron Fist and the 10 Rings, because we've seen both of them now in the MCU. But it just goes to show in this that Kingpin has people everywhere, because the sketchy looking dude at the roller rink obviously says, "Oh, I found the killer of the king," no, showing that people have eyes everywhere, which I'm actually surprised that many people would know what she looks like outside of the town. But it looks like she's also looking like she's bringing the gang war to her town, putting the people who are part of her family and friends at risk. But at the same time, she went there to blow up one of Fisk's train cars because Fisk has a shipping center, and it's looking like in the next episode she will be going to those train cars and trying to blow one of them up, trying to send a message because she wants to become a queen, kind of taking out the Kingpin and becoming one of her own, which I'm guessing this is going to be her transition into being a hero, where she's still going down that dark path. She hasn't fully gone that route of redemption yet, and she has so much more to go where she still has to become that hero. So I feel like that's probably going to be something happening later down the series, where her family, where some of her cousins are put in danger, where Bonnie's put in danger, and to be someone better, she has to change her ways, be less of a killer, be less of a criminal, and do stuff the right way, the just way. And that could be a speech from Daredevil coming to her later on, realizing they're good in her and trying to connect with her to get her to become better. So I'm very curious to see what they do with this series, because it's going to be heavily with Kingpin and Maya, where we get to the ending where Kingpin is alive in the hospital. And it's kind of definitely been pushing Kingpin and Daredevil for this series constantly, just to get people to watch it, because a lot of people who don't know the Echo character might not be inclined to wanting to see it. But if they hear Kingpin and Daredevil are in it, they're more likely to do it. Honestly, the whole idea of making Kingpin survive after that, if you wanted to have this huge, big, shocking reveal to be like, holy shit, Kingpin's alive, you wouldn't have put him in all the promotional material other than like flashbacks. But they really set it up so that you can kind of know he's alive. However, I think it was a solid first episode to the series, and I think I like what they did, especially because they are going that more street level character, brutal aspect of the Marvel universe. I think they're gonna do a good job, and I'm really hoping they do her character justice, and she ends up becoming a cool character we do see later down the road in like Daredevil, maybe Hawkeye again, or something along those lines, where when we do see more street level heroes. I'm excited to see what they do with this series. I'm looking forward to seeing more Easter eggs and references, because I feel like there wasn't enough in this episode. At least nothing I noticed. So let me know in the comments what Easter eggs and references you noticed, and what did you think of the first episode of Echo? Thanks for watching my video. If you want to see more of my Marvel content, make sure you hit the like and the subscribe button to stay up to date, and I will be posting another Echo video tomorrow. So I'll talk to you then.